Nilzara, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you. I'm like super excited.
Yes, me too. Me too. I think I found you on Instagram. I don't know if it was like someone that I know reposted you or something happened that brought me to you. And I saw that you were speaking at a recent summit that you were on. And when I saw your profile, first thing I saw was intimate partner violence advocate. And I was like, I need to know who is this woman? Like anytime I come across someone who has a similar experience as me, I want to know more about them. I want to bring them on the podcast. So thank you so much for being here today. And I'm just really excited to have a real ass conversation with you. So thank you so much for being here. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to people who are meeting you for the first time.
Yes, so I am your real raw yet loving intimate partner violence advocate. So I have a heart to help women who are really struggling to find themselves after abuse, reclaim their mind, heart, and cookie through a spiritual journey. And I know that might sound some type of way, but I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. But I have a long history of wildness that has brought me to this place. And so that is where my heart's desire is to kind of stop the cycle of the craziness. Because I know for most of us, it's not just like, oh, a one-time deal. You know, for me, it was chronic. It was like, let's just bring him in.
Same.
Let's just roll in the douchebags.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I love douchebags. They're so great, you know? So
this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because I see me in you.
Yes. So, I know how hard it is to stop the cycle and how hard it is to accept that we are part of the cycle. And that humbling moment. And it's hard because you think that you're by yourself and you're alone. And really you're not, but you've been so mind fucked and all of the craziness that you've been in, you really do feel that you're alone. And so I want to just be here in support of women who feel that feel alone in the process. Like they want to change. They don't know how to, like, what do I do? What's the next step? And let them help them become whole, aligned with who they're meant to be. So then that way their relationships and the way they view things is at a different capacity than what they've been doing previously.
Y'all, this is why I wanted her on the podcast, because there are so many similarities that I cannot wait for us to get into, because me too. I was a habitual dater, relationship girl who was in these very volatile, gross, like just toxic relationships. And it wasn't until my last one that I talk about a lot that I almost lost my life. And that's what woke me the fuck up. So we're going to get into that. But again, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you so much for the vulnerability that you're going to share with us, because not only do I appreciate it, but I know my listeners as well love to feel seen, heard, and understood. Let's jump right into it now. I always start off with every guest that comes on the show to talk about childhood, adolescence, any pivotal moments in your life that really shaped you into who you are. Share as much that you're comfortable with talking about that point in time of your life.
Yeah, for sure. So there's so much. I would say I grew up as a daddy's girl. I had no idea, the dysfunction that was going on around me, the craziness. Like my mom was really unhappy. So she was out all the time. And then there was my dad. My dad was home all the time. And that was just because like he couldn't keep a job and whatever. Like when you're little, you don't see those things. You don't understand the concept of like what a marriage and a relationship is. So my dad was the one that was always home. I would be super sad to see my mom go, but my dad would be like, it's okay. We're going to have family time. We're going to watch movies. One of my favorites, and I don't know if this was the same for you, but way back in the day, HBO used to be on Channel 5. And every once in a while, they would have a free month of HBO or whatever. So we would be super excited. And my dad would get like potted meat and pieces of bread. And that's what we would snack on while we watched whatever movie came on. And I mean, I shouldn't have been watching half of the stuff that we saw. But again, I didn't know. He would ride his bike with me to school. He would pick me up in his bike and we would ride back. And there was this one time I needed a cold lunch for a field trip. And of course, like food was scarce, our electricity would come on and off, just kind of that scenario. And he's like, oh, you don't worry, So we had a can of corn. He put can of corn in a Tupperware, squirted some ranch on it. He walked down the street to our little local store we had and it got me, I think it was an orange soda for 50 cents. Duct taped it to the Tupperware, or it wasn't even, quote unquote Tupperware, whatever it is, bowl that he found, and duct taped it all. And I took it to school and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And now I understand why my teacher was like, so corns and ranch, huh? And I'm like, yeah, corn and ranch. It's so good. So it was things like that where I really just fell in love with my dad. Like he was so perfect in my eyes. And then my parents, things caught up and they divorced. And that separation totally threw the whole family for a loop. Obviously, it's a divorce, right? So dynamics are going to change. But my dad, I don't know what happened, but he became an addict after that. Women, opiates, alcohol, like all of those were his vices. And me and my sister were just kind of like, okay, fend for yourself. So I stepped into the role of kind of being more of his mother than I was a daughter. And in that, it really skewed how I saw myself, my perception of love and how I interact with the opposite sex and what that's supposed to look like. And that was very pivotal for me because from that moment on, I was really trying to prove to my dad that I was worth his sobriety and I was worth his love. And in that brokenness, I continued the cycle of me trying to get that love from my dad and men. So I would attract men that supported the subconscious idea I had of myself of like, oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough for my dad's sobriety. I'm nothing of value because if I was, my dad would be able to do all these things for me. So there was just like this perpetual cycle that I went through where it was just like one douchebag after another. And maybe the abuse looked different. The faces obviously looked different, but the way I felt was reinforced with every relationship. So that was a very pivotal moment for me. It was when my dad divorced my mom and he just went off the deep end.
And how old were you when that happened?
They divorced when I was in junior high. I don't know, like 12, 13. But it wasn't, my dad was working night shift. So during that time, he still lived at home with us because he was at working graveyard. So my mom's like, you can stay as long as you're working graveyard. And then that changed and we moved. And that was huge because I'm going into high school, which is crazy already. Then now I'm having to take care of my dad. And his lifestyle is bleeding into how we function and the way we do things. I'm being exposed to things that I've never seen before. I'm partaking in things that I've never partaken in before. And it was a shit show. 100%. And my sister's 8 years younger than me. So she was really little. And it was this like weird, let me protect you while I'm taking care of dad, but following in his footsteps as well. It was just a crazy dynamic. It was really a hot mess.
Yeah. And that's why I always like starting off with childhood because there's so many things that we experience during that time frame that really shapes us into who we are as adults. And I appreciate you for going there and for really talking about the good and the bad. It doesn't always have to be this dark cloud that's like, oh, I had an abusive childhood. And there's beautiful moments as well, despite if you were lacking in some sort of area. But I just really think it's so important for us to realize how much the shit that we go through as kids really follows us into our adult life and especially in our romantic relationships. So thank you for sharing that. So now I want to kind of like transition to adulthood prior to you becoming who you are now. And I would love for you to talk about the change that it was for you. Again, like you shared the pivotal moment in childhood. What was the shift for you prior to the abusive situations that you were in into like, this happened, so now I'm going to become this intimate partner violence advocate, coach, whatever you want to call it. Like, take us on that journey.
Sure. So from that moment forward, I lacked boundaries. I was just desperate. Let's just be real. I was fucking desperate. I was mortified of being alone for my whole life. And in conjunction with my upbringing, I'm also Hispanic. So it's very like, we're almost just told, for me, it was like, okay, so you're going to get married one day and you're going to be a wife and you're going to have to do all the things. You're going to have to cook and you're going to have to clean and you're going to have to, when you get married, your body is your husband's, and when he wants
We're
to have
conditioned to thinking that way.
that's what it is. Yes, we're conditioned. So it's not like I'm growing up to be my own person. I'm already being conditioned to be somebody else's. So I never had an opportunity, in conjunction with all the stuff that went on with my dad, I never had the opportunity to understand who I was as an individual. And I think that Hispanic cultures, and there are other cultures that are very interdependent anyways, where it's very much about us as a whole versus an individual like Western cultures. So you add that dynamic in, right? You add in the dynamic of all the craze that went on with my dad. And then also for me, religion had a big influence as well. That his hardcore Hispanic religion is like, so that reinforced again that when I get older, I'm going to be a wife and a homemaker and all these things, and my body's not mine, right? So I had all of these things. Like I really loved God, but I had this heavy religion and then the Hispanic way. And if I'm not doing things the Hispanic way, then I'm being white, right?
Oh, yes. I'm curious, what's your background, your Hispanic background?
Puerto Rican.
Oh, girl, me too. Okay. Yes.
Yes. So it's like all of these dynamics. So if I'm trying to be healthy and do things a certain way, well, you're being gringa. And I'm just like, actually, I'm just trying to be healthy. I don't think it has anything to do with being white. Not that there's anything wrong with being white, but that's just the mentality, especially of the old school Hispanics,
Yeah. When you're going against the grain.
Yes, there's a way we do things and families first, even though families blowing shit up and they're fucking screwing you in every aspect, but they're number one.
Right.
We cover for them, we do all the things. And that is like mental abuse, y'all. Like if somebody's asking you to cover for something that's not right or to lie, I mean, that in itself is just unhealthy, right? So I had all these dynamics and I'm trying to find myself and figure things out. I'm desperate for love. I just didn't know who I was. And so I just attracted what I felt about myself. And that was complete trash. And I really felt that I had this superpower that if I just loved them enough, that they would change and love me back.
I'm laughing not because at you. I'm laughing because we are the same fucking person. Why do we think I can just love you a little bit more and you're going to change when he's been a piece of shit from day one?
Or like my cookie has this superpower, right? That's like...
And y'all, when we say cookie, we mean vagina, okay?
Yeah. The vulva, the womb, all the things, yes. Right? And so it just trickled into everything. And this is how desperate I was. So my first husband, I met online on Plenty of Fish. So if you know what Plenty of Fish...
Stop. That's how I met my ex. The one who's in prison now for what he did to me. Yo, Plenty of Fish should be called Plenty of Felons. Stop. Do not cross. Do not pass. Go.
Yeah. Don't. Just don't. So I met him on Plenty of Fish. We talked, we met in September and he came to visit me in January and we didn't want to have sex outside of marriage. So we went to the strip because I'm from Nevada. So you can literally, there's chapels everywhere. So it was like 10 o'clock at night and we're like, let's do it, So I literally saw him face to face, maybe 10 hours, if that. And we went down to the chapel and we got married. And that was it. And I was like, this is from God. Oh my gosh, how crazy is this, right? So that's how desperate I was, that I was trying to make anything make sense. Oh, this is a supernatural sign from God over here, or this is that and this, or we believe the same. So that means that we're compatible, we're evenly yoked. And I mean, it was just a mess. So I ended up leaving him secretly packing while he was at work. I packed everything up and went back home and we got annulled. That's been wild because he still pops in every once in a while, but I got married again. Who knew, So became single, over bombarded my schedule, never healed, just did all the things that I thought meant that I was thriving and doing good. So I was going to school and I was working and I was being a really good aunt and I was doing all these things. And then I got married to another douchebag. And I really wanted it to work. Again, we did things by the book. We waited to have sex till we were married. We did all the churchy things that you can think of. And here we are again. I am in the same place with all of the craziness that's been happening, that cycle that's happening that reinforces how I feel about myself. And again, I have all these different faces, right? And the abuse might look different, but it was all abuse. So some was more emotionally abusive, some was sexual, some was physical, some was like reproductive, like taking control of what I can't take or do what finances. I was just getting myself into these relationships that all looked the same. And I was trying to morph into whatever it is that they wanted. So I am not super big right now on looking pristine all the time, but man, I was like 40, 50 pounds lighter back then. I had the big, beautiful hair. Whatever they wanted, I did it. And I would make sure I did it perfectly. And I did it exactly the way they wanted because I wanted to be the hot trophy wife and I wanted to be loved. And I had all of these like really skewed expectations of myself and what I expected from these men in these relationships. But I found myself in all of these relationships like being motherly towards them and not necessarily being a wife or a girlfriend. I was just being a mom, doing the things as a mom would for a toddler. And then being abused on top of it. It's pretty cool. So it wasn't until my second marriage that I was just like, I cannot take this anymore. I'm like in my early 30s at this time. And I'm just like, okay, God, here's a come to Jesus moment. And I have to humbly accept the fact that I am the common denominator in all of the craze that's happening in my life. And not that I deserve the abuse that was happening to me, but my unhealed wounds was my responsibility and I was not tending to them. And that was my fault. That is where I didn't take responsibility. And so in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm part of the issue here. I have to humble myself. And so that's when I decided to heal. That was when I was like, okay, I need to sit in my shit and I need to figure it out. I had to release any expectations of like what I thought healing looked like or felt like, the time frame, all of that. I had to let it go because I'm not just healing from the abuse. I'm healing from all of the things that the abuse was attached to and the lingering effects and just all of it. So how can I put expectations on what that's supposed to look like when it is a clusterfuck of shit?
Oh my God. There's just so much that I can relate to. And I just appreciate you for going there because I literally see myself in your story. And that's why I love having these conversations because I know a listener or viewer out there can also feel and see themselves in bits and pieces of what you talked about. So thank you so much, first and foremost, for going there and talking about it. Now, something that I'm fucking huge on, and y'all know if you've been here since day one, the accountability aspect and how life-changing that can be when it comes to healing from your shit. And I think it's so important for us to really like realize how much work it takes and how uncomfortable it is when you do have that realization. Because same for me. In March of 2021, when I came back home after escaping literally that abusive relationship, I had to look in the mirror and be like, all right, God, you know what? This is number 3 of the serious relationships that I've had. What the fuck is going on? Because I'm literally finding the same man, like my life coach, my ex-life coach used to say, same man, different dick. Same exact piece of shit, same exact toxicity, same exact cycle of abuse, but in a different face, in a different body. And like you said, the common denominator was me. I had to take some responsibility of finding or attracting myself to this type of person. What was it about me that I had to work on? I can no longer play the victim and put it, oh, it's his fault. It's because what he did to me and da da da. No, 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 no. We got to stop victim blaming other people and victim blaming the situations and really look in the mirror and swallow that fucking pill that we don't like to swallow. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was just a guest on a podcast right before we hopped on, and she asked me, like, so what did your personal development healing journey look like? And that was number one, before anything else, before coaching, before therapy, before journaling, before any of the shit that we talk about, accountability and accepting my part of my own suffering. That is what changed my life. And people don't like to do that. People don't like to take responsibility over their own suffering.
Yeah, it's so much easier just to be like, well, I'm a victim. My dad was this, I'm that, and it's almost like a comfort to us. And another part is taking responsibility is acknowledgement for ourselves. And for most of us, in my little niche area too, I really have expertise areas like codependence. So codependents have no real connection to self. There is none of that. So even being able to acknowledge the fact that, hey, this is happening or I'm a part of the issue is really hard because there's no connection to ourself, right? That's always the other person. It's always, what can I do for you? How can I fix this? I'm a people pleaser. My identity relies on you. I'm going to do this so you can love me. So there's never that real acknowledgement. It's really hard to have that moment of like, hello, I'm part of the issue here. Like my energy is bringing this to me and I have to figure that out. So there is that little piece that I do want to put in there that sometimes when we're so hyper focused on the other person, it is really hard to take care of ourselves. And this is part of acknowledgement. We have to acknowledge that we too are in the relationship. And let me tell you, in order to thrive in craziness, you will become crazy. So there's some shit that you've done too that is like, what in the hell?
Oh, absolutely. I will be the loudest to say I was toxic too. I still am. There's still, I'm a human being. There's still parts of me. I could be petty. Like I'm that type of person. Absolutely. I don't want to make it seem like I was this angel in the relationships because I definitely wasn't. But toxic attracts toxic. And what the fuck do you guys create? A shit show.
Yeah. And you can't say that you've been perfect, and not necessarily saying you, but I'm just saying in general. Yeah, you can't say that, oh, I've been perfect in this relationship, because the thing is that in order to maintain toxicity, you have two options. Either you get out and we don't maintain toxicity at all, or we have to become some type of level of toxicness in order to thrive in that relationship. That's our coping, and that is just how we do things. So we have to take responsibility. We don't take responsibility of the abuse because no matter how crazy we are, we're not responsible for somebody abusing us, period. But we do have to take responsibility that in our upbringing and the way we see things is toxic too. Codependence, the way we think, like, if I'm going to do all of these things for me in return, you love me. That means that you feel that love comes with a price. That in itself is unhealthy, right? So there's just a lot of bits and pieces. And when we heal, there's so many things. That's why I stress to my clients, like, we really need to relieve ourselves from any expectations of what any of this shit's supposed to look like, because it is so enmeshed of all the things that it is going to take time. Healing mentality is a lifelong commitment, and it's an unlayering that has to happen. We have to take responsibility for what we can. And then the other stuff, we don't take responsibility because we tend to take too much responsibility or responsibility in the wrong places. So we have to shift that, and we have to give back their douchebagness and their asshole ways. Give that back to them, because that's on them. That has nothing to do with you. I don't care if you were having a bad day or whatever the case may be. Like, that's on them.
Period. There's so much goodness coming out of this conversation. Ditto to everything that you said. I couldn't relate to it more. Now, She's an author too. She has a book out there. And thank you so much for sending me your chapter. I read it and I was like, this specific section, we got to talk about it on the podcast that I personally really resonated with. So I'm going to read it and then we're going to jump into it. So you wrote, quote, in this state of hostility, your insecurity set in. You needed to know that I still loved you. And you said the only way to prove it was to have sex with you. I didn't want to, but I knew sex would provide a short moment of what I thought was safety until the roaring tide rose again. Sex was the only thing I felt I had control over, or so I thought. It was a mechanism that I used to bring about what I thought was peace and closeness. Sex was the only time I felt connected to you. It was the only intimacy you gave me without begging for it. End quote. Girl, first of all, I just got to say before we even like break that down, the way you write is beautiful. So
Thank you.
flowers to you for the way that you describe your life. Now, why I resonated with that so much, particularly to the last relationship that I was in, it very much started off the one that I met on Plenty of Fish. But it started off as a very lust-filled relationship, a very like we just fucked all the time. Like the day after I met him, we had unprotected sex. It's wild, the things that I did. But I just felt like that was the only way that I could show him. I would have to give myself to him so that he could stay faithful, so that he wouldn't put his hands on me, so he wouldn't do anything like, let me give myself to you, even though you treat me like shit. And I think that's something that you can relate to too, of how we use sex to like keep the peace, but how it really didn't do that, right? And you talk a lot about reclaiming your cookie or, you know, your vagina for those who have not arrived. Um, how reclaiming one's cookie after abuse is often a challenging aspect of healing. So, talk a little bit more about your experience if you want to, and what resources or strategies can a survivor do to really reclaim their body after being in these abusive types of situations?
Like I said in the book, sex for me was something that I was able to use as a means of connection. It is the only real way in that time frame that I knew how to connect and feel wanted. And so I thought, hey, if I'm getting dicked down right now, then he's not doing it to somebody else, you know?
Same.
If I'm doing a circus act and I'm flipping it and turning it and like legs in the air and doing all the like wild and crazy things, then like, hey, he's here with me and I don't have to worry about him being with somebody else. Again, I wasn't a part of the equation. I'm doing all these things for them. It wasn't for me in a sense. It was for me to like for the night to sleep well because he was next to me. But I was sacrificing my mind, heart, and my cookie in order to try to make something dysfunctional function, right?
Mm.
And so I found myself doing these things, or even like if I would get my ass beat, I knew that if I was, even though I'm crying and all these things, if he wanted it, I'm going to give it to him because then I know that he's going to fall asleep and we're going to have a moment where I can sleep and rest and recover and take care of myself a little bit. So I can disconnect. I could check out for a little bit. He could do whatever, or I can pretend, and make him feel like the superstar that he needs to feel like in the moment, and then proceed on with my day. And then, of course, I was in the relationships where my cookie wasn't mine. It was gladly taken whenever. And even in my marriages, and this is where like religion and my culture really kind of tied in, is like I gave permission. I gave permission at the altar, period. And that was it. My body was no longer mine. I'm here to fulfill my husband or even my boyfriends at their expense. It didn't matter. So it was, again, about them. So that played a huge part on my mental health and how I saw myself and how I valued myself. And so I wanted to make sure that I'm like, if I'm going to be a coach and an advocate for these women, that I'm going to help them reclaim all the things. And that includes sex, my vulva, my vagina, my womb, all the things. because this is sacred area. This is a place where our womanhood, biologically, we're women. This is what identifies that. And so when we disconnect from that, we're disconnecting from the very thing that's making us a part of who we are. And oftentimes women are like, Nez or Nilzara, I feel all over the place. And when I ask questions and I start pulling, it's because trauma after trauma after trauma has happened. And there has been a disconnect with all of these traumas. And I'm like, no wonder why you feel all over the place. It's because you are literally, energetically, spiritually, all over the place. You have disassociated in a million ways. And so that includes our cookie. I mean, I wasn't having sex all the time. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was times where it was good, but it wasn't intimate. I wasn't a part of the equation. It was a circus act. So in order to do that time after time after time after time again, you have to disconnect. You have to pull that part away. So then that way you can put on the circus act or pretend or, oh my God, this is so great. In order to lie all the time, dishonesty equals disconnect. You can't be honest and be connected with yourself at the same time. That's why I incorporate that when I work with my clients. I'm going to have you reclaim your mind, heart, and cookie. So your thought process, your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Your heart, we're going to revamp what love looks like to you, reignite your heart's desires. And by all means, you're going to reclaim your cookie and you're going to start tending to her, because that is where our power is. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we create babies. Hello. And if there wasn't power in the cookie, then we wouldn't have things like brothels or strip clubs or anything like that. It's because the cookie is powerful. We need to understand that what we have between our legs is powerful and it's sacred. And I'm not saying this in a super churchy way, but I am saying this as an alignment as a whole. Not everybody deserves to be up in our cookie, because there is an exchange there. Whether you believe in soul ties, whether you believe in energy, whatever it is that you believe in, there is an exchange. And you have to know that you are opening yourself up to some bullshit. And then you wonder why the cycle is repeating itself.
Girl, where were you when I needed you in 2020?
Well, I am here now.
Yes.
So yes. It's huge. It's just massive, massive, massive that we reclaim all parts of ourselves. If we want to be aligned and function as a whole, we have to reclaim every part of ourselves, and that includes our cookie.
Y'all, she is preaching. It is Sunday when we are recording, so we are in church right now. So many good things that you're talking about, and I really just appreciate the realness that you're coming with, because somebody's going to receive this message. I mean, I'm telling you, Leanne from 2020 needed you, but you're here now, and I really just appreciate the gems that you're dropping for the audience. So let's continue talking about the healing process. We said before, it's a lifelong journey. It's very complex. There's highs and lows. It's not we're sitting in a Zen space and rainbows and butterflies. No, the shit can get ugly. So can you explain the key stages survivors often go through when it comes to reclaiming their mind, heart, and cookie after experiencing abuse? Then I have a part 2 to that, but let's start with that one.
So for me, I feel like the number one most important thing for anybody listening, client-wide, whatever, is to have that reconnection with yourself, to consciously make the decision that first I'm healing and then I'm connecting to myself. And in that connection, there are tons of studies that show that those who have a spiritual practice have a higher chance of sustaining programs for treatment. They have higher recovery rates and those types of things. So as we get to know who we are, as we start to reclaim and reconnect who we are, not only are we doing that, but we're connecting to ourselves spiritually and to our higher power. So it's kind of like the circle that happens, because I believe that we are a unique expression of God. Like He created you and was like, this girl is going to be able to teach like me. She's going to have a voice like me. So I love that. And to think about that, like, yo, God created me, like I can write like Him. So as we get to know ourselves, we're also getting to know who, like our unique expression. So that is pivotal. That is like the number one thing I do with my clients and in the groups that I have is like, listen, We are going to consciously make the decision to reconnect with ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally. All those things that have been severed, we are going to reconnect. So it's a matter of like, I love going through the meditation process. And in my meditation, I'll say, okay, so you're going to do whatever you need to do in order to take these parts of you back. So if you need to have a big ass dinosaur with you and the dinosaur annihilates all these people, whoever comes up in your meditation, let them. And then you grab those parts of you back. Maybe it's your literal vagina, you grab that back. Or maybe it's a memory that happened that you want to take back. So it's making that conscious decision that you're piecing everything together, and those parts of you that you may not know that you left behind, that you're leaving the door open for that to come together. That is like the number one biggest part. We're going to make that a thing. And then teaching that your thoughts, feelings, and your emotions, because that's like one of the first things that they tell us, that we're crazy and that we're thinking wildness. And so we disconnect from those. We're going to reconnect to those, and you're going to start paying attention to those things, because those are the very things that are going to actually help you to nourish yourself, that actually tell you what it is that your body needs. So those are huge. And then you have to love differently. You have to learn what love is. So as you're piecing all these things together, you're getting to know yourself. You're getting to understand your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It's going to start changing how you love yourself. And that's going to start changing your outside relationships, because you're going to start seeing yourself in a different light. You're going to start understanding who you are as an individual, so you can start advocating for yourself. So all that energy that you put out here, we're going to turn it within. And it's uncomfortable and it's weird. You're like, oh, so much work. But that's part of that. Allowing those desires that you have in your heart, let them reignite, let them come forward, follow through on them, because that might be the very thing that opens the floodgate for you, and it's a done deal, you know? And then your cookie is huge. One of the biggest questions that I love asking my followers or whoever is like, hey, if your vulva had a voice, what would she tell you? Put her on the shelf right in front of you and let her talk to you and see what it is that she has to say. And I remember the first time I did that, I was a hot mess, because I didn't listen to her for the longest time. I said, keep your mouth shut. You're going to get it in. You're going to get dick down today, even though you don't want to. And ultimately, that's me telling me to shut up. And you're going to do whatever it's going to take to make this dysfunction work. Think about that.
There's so many layers, and y'all, I think that's why it's so important for us to really seek that help and that guidance from people like Nilzara and myself, who have been there, who know exactly how you're feeling, and working with someone. You know, this isn't a pitch to like, hey guys, go work with Nilzara or work with me. It's not like that, but like, I think it's so important for us to really know that there is help out there for people who get it, who see you, who understand you, and who want to help you grow. And that self-love journey, it's so cliche, but once you learn how to love yourself, you're just going to show up so differently, and you're not going to continue attracting the same type of toxicity that you did before. That's why it's so important for us to take the time to heal, to not numb ourselves out with sex or drugs or eating or partying or whatever it is. Like, really take the time once you're out of these relationships to really get to know who you are at your core. Because like you said, we lose ourselves. I definitely lost myself in all of my relationships. And now I'm really starting to get to know Leanne on such a deep level, and she's a bad bitch. I'm just saying.
Yes, of course.
And so are you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, it sounds great and beautiful, right? But I also do want to talk a little bit about the heavy side when it comes to the healing, especially as abuse survivors, how we deal with self-blame, we deal with guilt, embarrassment, anger, sadness, all these things. So you being someone who works with clients in this space, how do you help navigate these feelings to go more towards a feeling of self-empowerment?
So when it comes to negative feelings, so kind of like what I was mentioning earlier, our brains are the weirdest, wildest things. They work for us and against us and do all the things, right? So our whole life we have conditioned our brain to know that we are not valuable. So we are constantly investing in others. So the second we decide to invest in ourselves, our brain is going to be like, red fucking flag. What are you doing? And it's going to bring up all the guilt, all the shame. It's going to make you question things. You're going to become confused because your brain is doing its job at trying to keep you safe. Now, safe doesn't mean healthy. Two different things. It's where you thrive the highest. So that can be in craziness. I've been in craziness the majority of my life. Let me tell you, I can survive the craziness with my red flag and all the things, right? So your brain is going to tell you and make you feel some type of way to keep you in that safe space. So you can either tell the guilt and the shame and the sadness and all that stuff, hey, we can stay here and we can be in this, or you can come for the ride. Let's roll together. And that guilt and the shame and all those feelings are going to be there until we sort out what we've gone through, until we've healed. So it is normal. It is a part of the process. And as time goes by and we start healing things and empowering ourselves and start learning things and just seeing things differently, those parts of us aren't as loud. Those versions of us that are like, go back home, they're not as crazy because they see that there's safety ahead. They're like, oh, okay, we can do this. Okay, so we'll take another step. We can do this, and okay, we can move a little bit closer. But when we have those thoughts, feelings, and emotions, we have to remember that, first of all, they're powerful. They're actually trying to tell us something. And if we just sit and listen, then we'll know that, hey, these are parts of us that have had their asses beat and annihilated, and they're just trying to keep us safe. So in the process of healing, I have to make sure that my decision as a whole encompasses these other versions of me where I'm not going to make them get loud again. So we're going to try and keep all things at bay. Not that they're going to be quiet, because homegirl's been there for a long time and she's protected you for a really long time in the best way she knew how to. So, but if you feed her the right things, if you shower her and you do all the right things, she's going to calm down a little bit. She's going to be there in the corner looking like this and making sure everything's okay, but she's going to go on the ride with you. So it's about bringing that safety in and really understanding that the brain is just doing what it's doing. It's just doing what it needs to do. And those feelings can come with you on the journey. And then having faith that as you work through these things and you start understanding and piecing things together, and having faith that God will bring whatever it is that needs to be brought up, that we will be fully equipped to work on that. Because sometimes we think we're like, hey, this is what I need to work on. But when we sit down on it, it really has nothing to do with that. It has something to do with this instead.
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's so much deeper. I just want to say I'm falling in love with you with every single question that I'm asking you. You are amazing. There's so much goodness that you're dropping. So thank you so much. I'm going to keep saying it because there's just so much wisdom that can come from the shit that we experience. And I think it's important for us to highlight that for others who may be right now in the trenches, feeling like there's no way out. You are the perfect example of there is beauty and healing and thriving regardless, afterwards. And that can be you too. So thank you so much for that. Okay. So let's talk to that person now, since perfect segue. What advice would you give to someone who's currently either in an abusive relationship or has just left and they're in that chaos of oh my God, I don't know what the fuck to do? What would you tell them? Or they're even afraid of leaving or asking for help. What would you say to them?
So if you are the person that is in the relationship, you want to leave, but you don't know how to, or you are scared, or fill in the blank. First, I want you to know that you do have a choice, because I know some of us feel like we don't have a choice. We don't have anywhere to go. There's just no options. There's always, you have a choice. Now, leaving might mean that you set up a goal in the next 6 months. Leaving might mean that you are set to leave in a year, that you start strategically, and I know you're smart, because in order to stay in a crazy ass relationship, you start picking up on things and you start understanding how things work, and you can strategically start playing things here and there. You take an extra dollar or two, you take an extra $5 here and there, you start stashing that. You buy an extra can of green beans. You do things slowly and surely. You got kids, you start stashing clothes, you start making copies of important documentations, you start making phone calls. Where can I go? What can I do? What resources do I have? You start getting acquainted with those things very strategically and carefully, because when we leave, we want to make sure everything is in place as best as it can be, because then it gives us a higher chance of not going back. And that's what we want, because if we go back, we think shit sucks now, it's going to be even harder the next time around. So the more we have in line, and when that opportunity opens, you can book it. You can leave and be gone. And that is the ultimate goal. Now, I know that's not perfect for everybody. Some people's abuse is way more serious. And I don't want to say that making it sound some type of way, but some people are getting their ass beat every single day. And in that, I would say just leave, figure it out, call your shelter, do whatever you need to do, right? But leaving doesn't mean it has to be right now. Does it suck that you have to act for the next 6 months to a year or however long till you have enough saved up or whatnot to leave? It does. But the purpose of leaving is to leave and not feel like I have to go back because I don't have anywhere to stay or I don't have my things in line. When we leave, we want to leave. So that's what I would say to somebody that's in it. You have a choice, and it's okay that your out plan is going to take some time. Start making phone calls. Who can you connect with? Who is a family member that'll take you in for a couple weeks? Those types of things. Start answering and doing that type of homework. So when that moment comes, it's a green light. Boom, you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's so important. As someone who I am a Virgo and I love to plan, I love to organize, like that's where I thrive the most. I think that's such beautiful advice. Thinking about my situation, it was a completely different. I literally escaped the second that I had the opportunity to. There was no thinking about planning it. It was just like, it was a life or death thing for me. And I know that everyone's situation is different, especially if you have kids, if you're married, if you have properties together, like we get that. But like you said, it's important for you to realize that regardless of what you're going through and what that abusive person is making you feel like, you don't have a choice. You absolutely do. And you have the power to take control back over your own life. And sometimes it does take a little bit of planning. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And my first one was strategic and I had to leave the opportunity. And the second one, I was able to plan a little bit more. So just depending on your situation will depend on what that looks like for you. But if you leave, know that you can stay gone. The bills aren't getting paid. Like, it is what it is, right? Like, certain things aren't happening. It is what it is. It's more about survival at this point, and then you can start taking care of all the craziness afterwards. Now, if you are somebody that is out and you're safe, meaning that you have a roof over your head, you have a job, like that part of you is stable, and you're having like these overwhelming feelings of all the things, and you might miss the person. Remember, the brain is a little crazy. Okay. It's a coping mechanism. Your brain is going to make you think of all the great times that you had in order to help you cope through the situation. So of course you're going to miss them, but no contact.
Say it again. Say it again.
No contact. None. Because it's all about control. And the second they see you respond or you read the message, they know they're in and they can swoop right back in and tell you all the things and buy you. No. No contact. Get connected. This is a vital time where you have to be connected. Find a coach, find a support group, find a counselor, a trauma counselor, find whoever, a mentor to get you the support that you need. And not only that you need, but that you deserve.
I'm so glad that you said that. The block button is my favorite button. Okay. And I'm grateful for my situation that he did end up in prison. So he had no opportunity to contact me, even though he tried doing it third party, but that just gave him another fucking charge. And I had to change my phone number so we could really do the no contact. This motherfucker's crazy, right? Plenty of fish, I'm telling you. But yeah, it's just so important. Like, if you're serious about, like, I'm done, I'm blocking you, I'm blocking your mom, I'm blocking your sister, your friends, anything that connects me to you, we're done. When Leanne is done with something 100%, there is no going back. You're not going to have the opportunity to do what you did to me or do something even worse. And I think that's like a way of taking control over ourselves, right? By, no, we're not fucking doing this. I'm not going to read your text message. I'm not going to follow you. None of that shit. No contact is so important, but it is hard, right? It's a hard thing, especially when those feelings comes up. I'm telling you, when he was locked up, there was feelings like, damn, I'm sad. I miss him. I love him. The dick was great. Like, all of these things. But then you realize, bitch, he almost killed you. Like, what are you doing? No.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the brain, it's a crazy thing.
It really is.
But it's important for you to love yourself enough to be like, no more. So now I want to ask you the questions that I ask every guest as we wind down this conversation. So you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast.
Yes.
So tell me your definition of thriving.
So I feel that thriving is when you are aligned with your unique expression, your divine unique expression. You are open, you understand your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You are coming from a place of love, right? Not skewed, of healed love, because that comes with boundaries, that comes with good communication skills, that comes with all of that other stuff, because love isn't always lovey-dovey. It comes from a place of being centered and having value in yourself above others. That you know that what's best for everybody is what's best for you first and foremost.
Come on.
Yes.
Yo, she is preaching. I'm telling you. The self-love can change your fucking life. Like, you have to be selfish enough, self-full enough to be like, I matter the most, and then everything else comes after that. So this could be a controversial question, but I like to ask these uncomfortable questions on this podcast. Being the woman that you are, with all the life experience that you've gone through, good, bad, and ugly, if you had the opportunities today to sit down with the men who have hurt you in the past, what would you say to them?
I really thought about this question, and I was like, okay, like, would the spiritualness, like, what would she say? And I'm like, no, you know what? Like, in order for me to thrive, it's all authentic. It's the realness that I bring, whether it's good or bad, it's real. And in the realness is when I can change things. I can't change things when I'm being fake or whatever, right? So I'm having this battle in my brain, and I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. With the most like neutral, non-hostile, most loving calmness in my heart, I would say, fuck off.
Yes!
There is nothing you've done or said to me that has fucking altered. I've healed from it and I've moved on. I don't need your permission to heal. I don't need your permission to forgive. I don't need your permission for shit. So just fuck off in the kindest way. And the only reason why I would tell you to heal is because I don't want any more victims, right? But other than that, just fuck off.
That is the best answer I've ever had, because I've had other survivors of DV on here and I've asked them that question. That is the most real answer I've ever heard. And ditto, like, fuck you the long way and don't ever contact me ever again. Yeah. Kneel on rice, okay?
Yeah, go sit on it. And there you go.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So good. So real. I mean, we have real conversations on this podcast. So what kind of legacy do you want to leave the world? If someone has to sit down and write about you, what would you want them to say about Nilzara?
I want them to say that she was real, raw, yet loving. Like, that's what I go by. I'm going to tell you how it is and up front. And I want them to know that there was never any questions about how I felt about the situation. Like, if a friend came to me, I want to be real, raw, but I'm going to come to you in love. And that's what the legacy I want to leave is. Like, I'm here and my first priority, right, is for me to heal, to help others heal in the most realist, rawest way.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, that's what attracted me to you, because real recognize real, right? And I just love your approach. I love the way that you show up. And I just want to know if there's anything else, last words that you would love to share with my audience before you plug in, how we can work with you, follow you, all these things.
Yeah. One thing I do want to add is that there is no amount of love that you can give somebody that does not give two fucks about themselves or anybody else. There's no amount of love that's going to change them. There's no amount of love or transforming or changing or investing in them if they don't want it. It doesn't matter if you're perfect. It doesn't matter if you got your cookie rejuvenated. It doesn't matter if you have a ton of money. It doesn't matter if they're a hot fucking mess. It doesn't matter. So save it. Save it for yourself. So on that note, if you want to connect, because I love connecting with people and just growing community, like Mind Heart Cookie is on Instagram, and then coachnilzara.com is my website. And I am in kind of the weird transition of what I'm doing and all the things. So I'm one of the only Nilzaras out there. So Nilzara Rivera, just type me in and you're going to find me. You know, I do have some awesome things coming up that I would love you guys to be a part of, books and all the stuff. And so, yeah, I'm super excited to be here and just to be in support of this podcast. And whatever it is that you need from me, I am here for it.
Oh, girl, this is not the only conversation me and you are going to have. I appreciate you so, so much. I appreciate your rawness, your realness, your cursing. I love another sister who loves to curse as much as I do.
Let's be real, right?
Let's be real, right? Thank you so much. And I see you. I understand you. I see you showing up. And I'm just so, so excited to continue watching you grow and evolve. We're going to link everything in the show notes. Whatever changes come from when we record to when it's released, please feel free to send it over. And this is not the last time that you'll see the both of us together. So thank you so
I love
much.
it.